Money, consumption, status, and power have long driven our culture's pulse. They've shaped our motivations, our behaviors, and our beliefs. But what happens when we give art the same influence? Writers, designers, musicians, photographers, videographers, and the world's most creative minds have the power to heal us, challenge us, and guide us back home to ourselves. In their hands and through their crafts, we find a new world, one where art is a catalyst for powerful change, where self-expression, human connection, and deep empathy are the world's richest assets. This is Art is the New Wall Street, with your host, Morgan Short.
Hi, artists and creatives. Welcome back to Art is the New Wall Street. We've got an exciting one in store for you today. I'm so pumped about our guests. She owns Door County Candle Company and has founded several other successful businesses. She is a true philanthropist, having raised over $1 million for nonprofits and global causes, including Roslyn for Ukraine, Maui Wildfire Relief, the Travis Mills Foundation, and many more. With a background in communication studies and digital strategies, she's earned multiple awards locally and nationally. Insight Publications 40 Under 40, Hometown Hero Award issued by the Wisconsin State Assembly, and many more. Christiana Trapani, a business leader, a woman in manufacturing, and a philanthropist who embodies the spirit of giving back and making a difference in the world. Christiana, thank you so much for joining me.
Morgan, thank you. I'm so excited to be here. That intro just made me emotional. So thank you.
Oh my gosh. Christiana and I used to work together at an agency called Candeo Creative. Remember those days?
Yes, I was always honestly intimidated by you because I was like, Morgan knows so much. She's so good at everything she does. And I was very much like, I hope I can be just a fraction of her talent. So yes, I remember
Oh my
those days
goodness.
well.
Wow. That's wild to hear coming from you. You have made so much of a difference in the world. I'm so moved by what you are up to. You started your career in the marketing world. And what I really want to learn about is what made you make the move to become the owner of Door County Candles. Give us the background on how you started your career and then how you landed at Door County Candle.
Yeah, so it's super untraditional and not what people probably expect to hear about how I got to where I am. Toward the end and after grad school, I worked for a very small little agency in Milwaukee. I learned a ton. I did content marketing, SEO, website building, a little bit of everything. It was great. I learned a lot. I think I had 8 clients at a time, and it just wasn't fulfilling to me. And I wanted something that was full-time and stable, and this job wasn't necessarily full-time. So I applied for a job, and I started working at a B2B e-commerce software company. And though I loved my team, I loved my crew, they were amazing, the job itself was just not what I wanted to do. It was not fulfilling. It was dry. It was just not something I felt passionate about. So I was in the car driving to work one day. It's 15 miles from my condo to work, but it's an hour and a half to get there with traffic. So I was sitting in the car and thinking this can't be my life. I don't want this to be my life. This is not what I'm destined for. What am I doing? And it was very much an awakening, honestly. I don't know what I want to do, but it's not this, was really what it was. And so COVID hit, and I opened a small online gift box business. So supporting small businesses and putting together just cute, nice boxes that are all local products. The first box we did, we were donating a portion of all of our sales to a nonprofit. We actually had a fundraiser from the start also with a local theater. And so that was really fun. And I was wholesaling candles for that from the Door County Candle Company in town. And I met the owner. He was so nice. And I started wholesaling candles. And it was the second meeting I had with him. And I remember it like it was yesterday. It was a rainy October afternoon. And I went there to pick up 2 dozen cherry candles. And he walked me to my car. And I remember thinking I guess it's weird. Usually I carry them myself, but that's fine. And he was like, Christiana, I am looking to retire and I want to sell a business, and I think you'd be the right person to take it over. And like, that was how it happened. It was the second time that I really met him. And I was like, I'd love to. Yeah, it sounds perfect. And I was like, I have to talk to my husband, but I was like, but I'm in. Like, I'm in. And so basically, fast forward, he was like, but I want you to make sure you love this job. I want you to make sure like you love what you're going to do. So he's like, why don't you work under me for like 6 months? And if you love it, you'll buy it. And if not, we're good. No harm, no foul. We're good. So I worked for him for 6 months and I loved it. And then after I bought it, he worked for me for those 6 months also as like a mentor and like helping me out in the store and in production. So in those 6 months, I learned all about candle making and retail and running a business and ordering and fulfillment and manufacturing. And that's kind of where, that's how I purchased the candle company. It's funny because the other day someone asked me like, we started talking about the candle company and the ups and downs. And I said, I love to talk about the downs because I don't think people often enough talk about the hard parts of owning a business or doing something to this magnitude. One of my friends recently said, I think I said I was having a really hard day. And she's like, well, I would never think that based on your social media. And well, yeah, unfortunately, that's what social media is good at, is showing only the good, not the bad. So it's been a lot, but it's been amazing. I mean, I wouldn't change a thing about where I am today, but it's funny. People think I was like a passionate candle maker from my garage to here. No, I didn't know a thing about making candles until I was offered to buy the business.
I want to go back just a second to ask about Door County Delivered. So, were you doing that at the same time as your B2B e-commerce job?
Yes. So like I started that and I went to my boss and I was like, hey, so I want you to know I'm doing this, but it won't interfere with my work hours. I'm doing it after hours and early mornings and weekends. And he was like, that's great. I'm really happy for you. I was doing it together with my
Cool.
full-time job in the evenings and mornings doing Door County Delivered.
And then did you keep the full-time job through the pandemic until that second meeting with the previous owner of Door County Candle Company?
I kept my job until 2 weeks before closing of the business. It was very tough, but we decided I had to keep that job until I knew, things can happen, right? And things cannot go through. But yeah, I mean, the day we got the closing date from the bank was when I remember Nick was like, okay, you can give your notice now. And I did, but it was scary because it's like, you don't actually know, so it's very like, but that part, I didn't share with the team. Obviously I was under an NDA and whatnot. So I didn't share that with anyone that I was looking to buy the business. So it was difficult to be like having all my evenings and mornings consumed by that. And then having to,
of course,
and go back to that.
So during the whole 6 months of training under him, you were working basically 2 jobs.
Yes. Yeah. 2 full-time jobs. Yeah.
And how was that?
It was intense. I mean, it was a lot. It was, burnout. It was exhausting. It was stressful. It was scary. It was very much the unknown. What if it doesn't work out and I've put all my time into this? But I kept thinking, but what if it does, right? Like, what if it does work out? What if it's great? But it was very hard. It was exhausting. And it was just all around. It was just really, really overwhelming.
Mm-hmm. You said something in your story, which was you were driving home and you realized this isn't what I'm destined for. So how did you weigh the decision?
So there was a few things. Like, one was just I was so unhappy. Another thing, I was very lucky that my partner, my husband, still has a full-time job. And that was something that, we knew that he could support us, knowing that buying a business, you're not going to get paid for a while. And it's not a given you're going to get paid, and you might get paid half the year, but you might not. And so, knowing that as a team, we have enough to support us, that was a big thing. It was very scary. And it's really funny because when we went to the bank, I am the 100% full owner of Door County Candle Company. It's funny because at the bank, Nick had to still sign, because it's a marital property estate. He had to still sign that he understands the risk that this is, and that he understands that his partner, his wife, is doing this. And I remember thinking, this is a big risk. This is a huge risk. You're buying a candle manufacturer. A lot of emotions, I would say.
I Can imagine. Do you have any advice for someone who is looking to move out of a 9 to 5 and either purchase something or start something on their own?
I would say the first step is always the hardest. Once you take that first step, it gets easier. Still very hard, but it gets easier. The first step is the hardest step. Me quitting my job was insane. That was so scary. Another piece is when you do hire a really good team behind you to make sure. I've heard so many horror stories about like people going to buy a business that there was stuff that wasn't disclosed or whatnot. We went to the extreme to make sure like everything checked out because that's critical. I mean, this is your life on the line. And then also be prepared for tense difficulty and self doubt. Like, be prepared for that because it's going to hit intensely. It's like up and down, 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 and up. But be prepared for that. It's not what social media shows. Those boss ladies walking in the street with their suits and their makeup and their sunglasses, and they're killing it. That's awesome. But there's a lot that you don't see that goes down, and like just be prepared for the bad. I'm a very optimistic person, but I do share the tough and the hard parts because I feel like people don't talk about that enough, that there's like very difficult parts to it all.
What's one of the hardest parts that you've been carrying as of late?
The constant self-doubt, okay, what do we do now? Everyone goes to, you're the owner. Everyone goes to like, okay, business is slow. What do we do? This marketing technique didn't work. What do we do? It's constant self-doubt. I remember specifically when I bought the business was typically only open full-time from June to October. And then those off months, it was only open on weekends. And I bought it and I was like, no, we're going to open full time every month. It's going to be great. We're going to be running through the doors. This is great. November 1 hit and I didn't have a single customer. And I remember thinking, what have I just done? And we had no customers. We had no email list. I bought the business. They did no marketing. They had no email list. They didn't have a Facebook presence. It was horrifying. That November 1st day, I was legitimately standing in the doorway, looking at the parking lot thinking, why is no one here? The self-doubt is real.
And how do you start to overcome that?
I still have it, but I'm working on it. But I think part of it's just growing in your confidence. You are capable. You can do this. You have to take that self doubt and try to knock it out of your head because it's going to hit. And if you let it hit, it's going to just consume you. But you have to realize you're able, you're capable, take that confidence and just go with it. But it's really hard. Again, it's so incredibly worth it because the hours you put in, you're putting in for yourself. And that is the most fulfilling feeling because I could work for someone who takes risks or I can be that risk taker.
A 9 to 5 has its own set of hardships, and then entrepreneurship, artistry, being your own business owner, your own boss, has a whole different set of hard. I especially admire that you're willing to talk about the hard parts.
They're just not talked about enough, like the tough parts.
Mhm.
They need to be because it gives a false sense of like, oh, this is all great. But it's like, there's a lot
Yeah.
of hard parts to it.
Well, that, and we weren't designed to hold all this space in
No.
everybody else's minds.
No, seriously. And you don't ever learn. Like you don't learn this. Like you don't learn how it feels, what it does to you. It's just not something you learn. It's just not. You have to figure it out as you go. And it's hard. It's really hard.
And self doubt often comes as a symptom of imposter syndrome. I was talking with an entrepreneur who I admire so much, who I think, oh my God, she's got it all figured out. She has a thriving business. And she was telling me about how she was having imposter syndrome. And I'm like,
Oh,
what? You're cool and you have everything figured out.
right.
Everyone experiences this. And social
Yeah.
media makes it worse.
It heightens it dramatically. Yeah,
Mhm.
it really does.
So you purchase Door County Candle Company. In November, you're starting to see, oh my gosh, like, where are the customers? Fast forward a little bit, you raised more than $1 million for Razum for Ukraine. So talk to me about how this initial idea came to be.
Yeah. So, right. Bought the business in June. Business died November, December, January, February. And the war in Ukraine had broken out. And it was a very somber day. We talked to my family in Ukraine, and they were crying and they were just petrified. They were sending us videos of bombs being dropped in their backyard. And my grandma was here with us at the time, and she was legitimately shaking. I mean, she was shaking, reliving war as a kid. And it was horrible. I mean, we were all sitting in this room where I'm sitting right now. We were sitting and just crying, all of us. And it was horrible. We were grieving, and I remember we hung up with my aunt and we were just quiet. And I went to Nick and I was like, we got to do something. I don't know what. We got to do something else. I own a candle company. We got to figure it out. We had done a Ukraine candle fundraiser for a Ukrainian Catholic school where my parents got married, where I got baptized, where I went to Ukrainian school. So we had a connection. Let's do a candle and we'll donate all the profits to Razum. I had researched Razum. My family had connections to volunteering there. They were awesome, transparent, honest. And so the next day we went to work, and it was dead. It was so quiet. And Nick was about to paint the shop, and I was like, hey, can you record me doing this video talking about the Ukraine candle, because we had 7 candles left over from this previous fundraiser. This is plenty of candles. We need no more. We're good. And he recorded me. I remember he was like, you know what, I'm going to stop. And I was like, why? He's like, you're just not being raw and emotional. Why don't you just take your phone and do this yourself? This is not you. Just take your phone and do your own video. And I was like, thanks. So, I took my phone and I went in the back and I just spoke from my heart. I talked about what we were experiencing, and I posted the video talking about the Ukraine candle, and I put my phone down and went back to helping Nick paint the shop. And my phone started blowing up. And I was like, what is going on? 10 minutes after that, someone came in the shop to buy a Ukraine candle. And I was like, what?
Oh.
Like, seriously? What? Okay, this is wild. By the end of the day, we had 300 candles sold. And that's like insane, especially at the time what we were doing. That was wild. So Nick was like, okay, let's stop painting. Let's start making candles. By that evening, we had sold like 500. And that was insane. So we made 500 candles. We went to bed. We are caught up. We're good. Woke up. We're at 3,000 candles sold. And I got a call from ABC Chicago. They wanted to do an interview. So we did an interview, and it became so intense so quickly. That week, we had 4 news crews lined up in our production area interviewing us at the same time. 2 weeks after, the phones were ringing constantly from 9 to 5. There was no gap. One day, one of our colleagues from Dark Honey Coffee came over and with a napkin, David Muir, World News called. Please call back, not a joke. They called the coffee shop because they couldn't get a hold of us. So we called and they're like, we want to put you on the World News tonight. Can you do a video and send us immediately? And so we were on David Muir and PBS in the span of a week. And that just blew up. I came into work one day and we got in early, and there was like 100 people in line outside in our parking lot.
Oh my
like,
gosh.
Faces were in the doors. Volunteers were coming in to help us. Like from day one, volunteers in the community stepped up and were like, what can we do? The old owner called me the next day and he's like, can I help? And I was like, yes, can you be here? And he's like, oh, I'm ready, on the way. My lunch is packed. I'm on the way. And like everyone just stepped up to help. My mom, my family, everyone was like, what can we do? We had people lining up to come in to buy candles, and they would probably sell out of the batch of 500 we can make in about 20 minutes. So
Wow.
we would sell out immediately. Early on, people were sprinting back into production to get candles. And we had volunteers just like blocking the line into production because people were just like running back and grabbing hot candles. And it was just wild. We were so not prepared for the virality that happened from it, but supply chain, we didn't have the supplies. We were a brand and a company that made about 15,000 candles a year. So going to selling over 100,000 candles, that was something that in so many ways we were and like marketing too, having a love for marketing. I knew we got to be transparent as possible because our lead times went from like 2 days to 12 weeks. It was a crash course in literally everything. It was horrifying. I mean, Nick was the one that was freaking out about how are we going to do this? And I was the one that's like, we're going to figure it out. But he was the one like, but what if we don't? What if we don't? We have 50,000 orders in the line. What if we can't fulfill this? It was crazy. But we did. We fulfilled it. We figured it out. It was hard. It was very scary. But yeah, I mean, we were able to donate over $1 million and send over 15,000 tin candles to Ukraine during the course
And,
of this last few years. And it's unreal because I wanted to raise $5,000. That goal for me was huge. And the fact that we surpassed that so fast is just, people can achieve remarkable things. You may think you can't, but you absolutely can.
oh, it's such a moving story. I got goosebumps multiple times while you were recapping that. To go from crying with your family in your living room to the next day making a video about the war, deciding to put the energy into action, and then within a week having news lining up napkins on your windows. I mean, come on.
It was
That's
wild. I think it shows that when you're passionate and you're honest and you're raw and you put yourself out there, and I really do believe it comes back to you.
yeah, me too. I was just going to say that you at the time didn't have the resources to fulfill all these. What was your team? How were they? How many people did you have on board at that time?
So Nick, what my husband Nick was doing all of the ordering, the fulfillment. I had two candle makers and three store ladies. That's all I had. We
Wow.
had someone come in one day looking for a job. Do you need someone? I'm like, when can you start? Here's a tour. Here's the gig. Are you free? He's like, yeah, I can start now. Great. Let's go. And he's great. I mean, he still works for us today. He's amazing. So we added on 3 more employees since then. Everyone's hours went from very part-time to full-time. It was just one of those things. You always hear going viral is so cool, but when you actually go viral, it is horrifying.
What makes it so horrifying?
You're in the spotlight at this point. For us, at least, if you can't fulfill what you're promising, and for us, again, the 12-week lead time, that's a long time. We had like 98% amazing customers, but that 2% was rough, that were mad and angry and saying horrible things that were scarred in my heart that I will never forget ever,
Mm,
And like, that's not stuff you prepare for. You don't prepare for the horrible social media comments, the comments you get on the news articles, the calls you get, the comments that are made about you. That's not something you can prepare for. And that was something that took me a long time to figure out how to get thick skin for, because that was really hard.
feedback can be absolutely brutal. The things that people start saying about you as you grow, as you find success, and even as you're doing something really meaningful for the
Yeah.
world. Do you have any words of wisdom for how to build the thick skin?
The hard thing is, what I would say was something I would have a hard time following, but just know that you're always going to have those keyboard warriors. You're always going to have those people online, and you have to just take it with a grain of salt and understand it's not personal. If you told me that during the beginning of the Ukraine candle, I'd say thanks so much, but this is still soul crushing to me. That's the hard thing. And if you're passionate about something, yeah, it's going to hurt because you're passionate about it. This is your baby, this is your child. Like, of course it's going to hurt. It's easy to say, oh, thick skin, thick skin. It's like, I mean, yeah, but this is also my life. Like, so, I would say it takes time. I had a phone call from someone, and this is burned in my brain. So we had accidentally sent him one candle, not two. He ordered two Ukraine candles. And I called to apologize. I'm so sorry. It was a oversight. We're going to send you a new candle. And on the phone, he proceeded to yell at me and tell me that if I wasn't prepared to have a business, I shouldn't have bought one. I should be ashamed of myself and that I'm basically failing. And I started to cry. And he goes, oh, don't cry. You know what? You should just be ashamed of yourself in general. It was the meanest call. It
Wow.
was it was legitimately brutal. It was brutal. I started to cry. And the fact that he mocked me for that, we hung up, and I didn't answer a call for 8 months after that. After that, I was done answering calls at work. It was so mean. I was like, I'm doing something to try to help people. And that to me was very soul crushing, honestly. And it took me a long time. It took me 8 months to answer a dang call again, to talk to someone. I mean, so I will say, a lot of times when people say get thick skin, get thick skin, agreed, but it could take some time. And it's okay if it takes a year. or 5 or 10. I'm still developing that thick skin. I still am. It's taking time, but don't feel like you're weak if it takes you a little longer than you think it should, because it's, again, if you're passionate about something, it's going to take some time. And it's taken me a lot of time to get to the point where I am. I could still be probably more strong, but like, I'm also a human.
Two things come to mind for me. The first is the phrase let them.
Yes, yes.
People are gonna be who they are. People are gonna say what they're going to say. People are having bad days, and people are maybe jealous or envious of what you're building. People
Yeah.
are hurt themselves. That's one part of it that I think is really good advice. Just let them. The second is getting curious. Oh, I wonder why this guy is so frustrated and taking it out on me, right? Like, I wonder
Yeah.
what must be going on in his life that he has to
Yes.
take, like,
Yes.
you know what I mean? Or for ourselves, if something's hitting us really hard, why is this really hurting me? Is it hurting me because I believe it? If I don't believe it, then this is on them, not me.
Yeah.
If I do believe it, what can I change going forward?
Yes.
So
Yeah.
curiosity has helped me with the thick skin, as a writer, as somebody in marketing, as a podcaster, like especially about feedback that we get on our creative work or businesses.
It's so true. I mean, it's yes. When that guy yelled at me, I remember thinking, your life must suck. If you're doing this and people are dying in war right now, your life must be really rough.
Mhm.
If you're mad about this.
And Christiana, you have family in Ukraine. A lot of your family is there, correct?
Yeah, I have. So my aunt is primarily who I talk to, but I have a few aunts and uncles who still live there right
Mhm.
now.
And you are Ukrainian American.
Yes. Yep. I'm Ukrainian American. Both my parents are 100% Ukrainian. So it was my first language, and I'm second generation. So they were born here, but my grandparents, both sets, were born in Ukraine and immigrated to the States. But it was the first language that I learned growing up
Mm.
was Ukrainian.
It's pretty cool how your world as a Ukrainian American can be represented in Door County and in your business. So you get this influx of business. You are getting more orders than you can actually handle. And then at what point did it start to even out? Did you start to feel like, okay, we're handling this now?
Our biggest concern was donating, um not fulfilling. And it was like we were fulfilling as fast as we could, but like our biggest goal was to donate money. The first $125,000 donation check was wild. Like I remember thinking, like, see a picture, like, okay, great, back to work. But looking back, that's a ton of money. Like $100,000. Like I remember thinking, like, that's insane.
Mhm.
And we just kept going. Every donation amount to me was incredible. We hit 500,000. That was wild. And we hit, all those numbers were milestones to me.
Mhm.
And, I- one thing that I was just very stressed about was just was just getting everyone their I wanted everyone to get their candles. And that was hard because, again, it took 12 plus weeks between supply chain. We hired a night shift. We hired so many people at this time, but between all of this and the time and only having so many hours in the day, it was hard. But when we finally caught up on that, back order, it felt really good.
Mhm.
But to me, feeling like it was being paid off was every donation installment we made. That to me was just huge. It was huge because I knew we were sending so much money to a nonprofit that was using it for good, for boots on the ground, for action that was going to help people in Ukraine. Most people understood that the candle was more than a candle, and it still is more than a candle. And they understood that the Ukraine candle would get to them eventually, but they knew that that candle had a bigger mission in mind.
Mhm.
We had and still have such incredible, support system at the candle company that see that the candles mean more than candles. They mean something, and they're symbols of hope and light. And that to me was very rewarding. And it really still is.
And you trademarked Candles Creating Change, correct?
Yes. Yeah. Candles creating change. Yeah. And that all started because of Ukraine. It started from Ukraine, and then we did a candle for Hurricane Ian, raised, I think $14,000. And then we did candles for Maui. That was our second largest fundraiser, and that was for $60,000. And that was huge. We had a lot of candles for different causes, and they've really been incredible.
A small family owned business
Yeah.
donated more than $1 million to nonprofits.
Wild. Wild.
You,
Truly wild.
that is insane. That is insane. Are you proud of yourself?
I use it as motivation, inspiration that people are very powerful and more powerful than they think. Because I never thought in my life that I could I look at Candio and when we worked together, Morgan, I always felt like just a little mouse, quiet and I did my job, I did my best, and that was great. But if you asked me when we worked together back then, I would have said no. I could never do that. Never. It's just people are capable of really powerful, strong things. And it's just a matter of finding that within you. I really do believe that.
Mm, yes. Let's play that back. You are capable of really powerful, strong things.
Yeah.
Um,
Really
more than you will ever know. Oh, quick sidebar. Then you were on a game show. What
That
was
was
that experience like?
one of those calls that we happened to answer was from a game show producer in LA. And I remember the volunteer answered and they were like, does she have to fly out to LA? And Nick's like, what? And we almost didn't go because we're like, listen, we don't have time. We have this huge Ukraine candle project. And anyway, we talked with them and we went, and I'm very happy we did. We were at Universal Studios. We did this whole game show. I mean, my hair and makeup girl was Ukrainian. That was very cool. It was wild. I mean, it was just what
What,
is this life right now?
what a whirlwind.
Literally, what is this life?
Okay, so as a small family owned business, you've donated more than $1 million to various causes. You are a small family owned business. Recently, you posted about this on LinkedIn, and I immediately liked it and was like, oh my gosh, I haven't even thought about that. The post basically said something about how small businesses struggle to make their philanthropic
Oh
mark.
my God.
So just
Yeah.
tell me a little bit more about what you've seen and what's causing
Well,
that
that
frustration.
was a real pain point for me. We have wanted to support various nonprofits in our mission. And more than the amount of times I can count on my hand, we've had those nonprofits come back with, okay, but you needed to donate at least $500,000 to even be able to say you're donating to us. And it got to the point where I'm like, we want to raise money for you. We want to raise money for your cause.
Mhm,
And you are basically telling us that we have to hit a minimum. I can't tell you what we're going to raise. And
mhm,
we had enough of that happen to the point of we wanted to do something for breast cancer awareness. And someone said, okay, great, but you have to commit to $100,000. And I was like, we can't do that. We can't
mhm.
do that. And someone literally told me, you raised $1 million for Ukraine. So why should that be hard? And
Oh,
you've missed the mark. You have so dramatically missed the mark on what we want to do and how we are just here to try to make a difference. You've missed the mark. And so I made this post that talked about how these nonprofits are, not all, but many are missing that mark of we want to make a difference. We want to help. We want to donate whatever we can. Isn't it about making a difference no matter how small or large? It
mhm,
doesn't matter. We're still making a difference. And that post created a lot of conversation and a lot, there's one very large corporate nonprofit that had commented and they're like, oh, we hate when people do this. And I commented and said, and your corporate office was one of them. And
mm,
that he commented back and said, we should have a meeting. And I said, I'd love to have that meeting. And we met together on Zoom. And she said, you're not the first person to bring this to my attention. And I'm bringing this to the CEO of this nonprofit because this is an issue. Thank you, because it really is a huge issue. And I remember making calls for our 12 Days of Giving campaign. We wanted to donate to 12 different causes and let people pick what group they wanted their purchase to support. And I only had like 5 people say I could use their name. And we're thinking, are you serious? Are you serious? And it wasn't successful because people, no surprise, wanted to know where their money was going, but we couldn't say where because these nonprofits didn't want us to use their name. And it was something that I'm still very passionate about. I've had a lot of really good conversations come from it. And a lot of these nonprofits, I will say, like, have reached out and messaged, and they've been amazing to like want to talk and like, figure out how this can be worked on and made better. But it's incredibly upsetting
Mhm.
that even is a thing that I had
Yeah.
to post about.
Well,
It was
so I mean, this is coming full circle, sharing those challenges, not just the highlight reel out on LinkedIn, and look at what it was able to do. You started a conversation, you held up the mirror to these nonprofits and you said, "Hey, look, I am a willing participant. Like, I want to give back.
what help.
And
Yeah.
you're not helping me help you." you
Yeah.
know?
Some of the nonprofits I remember had reached out, was like, was this one of our corporate headquarters? And I'm like, yeah, it was. I hate to say it, but it was. Yeah. I mean, it was. And it did inspire. Like, I literally got about, like, I think I got like 45 messages from that post, like private
Mhm. See?
posts. And that was incredible. I was really happy to see the action that stirred up, because I
Mhm.
think a lot of times you need to make a post like that to have people like
Mhm.
be like, "Oh shoot, is that us?"
Another thing that you have started talking about a lot is navigating leadership as a woman in manufacturing. Can you share a story about something you've experienced?
I have a lot of stories, and I will preface by saying I have a lot of very supportive men in my circle. Nick is always fighting for like me, women's rights, all of that. But I have had a lot of men come to the shop that aren't. I've kind of made it into a thing of posting it on LinkedIn, honestly, and to share these stories. There's one that comes to mind, or two, but women in manufacturing face a lot of crap, and people don't take them seriously. I had just a few weeks ago someone come in at the counter. I was giving one of my employees a lunch break, and this guy came in with a binder and stuff, and I knew exactly what he was there to do, but I welcomed him, and he's like, "Can I help you?" He's like, "No, I'm good. I'm good." Okay, so he shopped around for about 30 minutes, and my employee came back from lunch, and she came back, and she's older than me, and you know, and he goes to her, "Hi, I'm here to speak to someone in charge, you know." And she goes, "Oh, over here." And he literally said, "She's in charge?" Like, I'm not even kidding. Like, I'm not exaggerating. That's what he said. And I heard
You
that, and I
are
was like, "Oh."
kidding.
Yeah,
You're
yeah. And
kidding.
he came over to me, and I said, "I heard you ask in disbelief if I was in charge." And I'm like, "Yeah, I am. Like, how can I help you?" And whatever he said, I didn't even listen. And I was like, "You know what?" I was like, and I told him, I was like, "What you said, you sealed the deal. I don't care if you have a better price for labels or whatever you're here to sell. The loss of respect that you just gave me is a price that I'm not going to pay." And I'm done. And I'm done. And I was, in that moment, I wasn't afraid to tell him that. And he was very kind of like, shocked, and left his paperwork with me. And I was like, it's not happening.
I am so freaking pumped up that you stood your ground and were like, dude, absolutely not. Like,
Felt really
I
good.
I am somebody who would have potentially crumbled and not known what to say, and then thought of all the things to say after he left, you know?
Morgan,
So
I would say that too, but when, like, if you were put in that position, I really think you would have done something similar. Because if I was told, I'd be like, "Oh, no, no." But when, like, you were in it, I really think you would have done the same thing. I
I
really
think
do.
I think today's Morgan would have, but I think
Yeah,
there's a past Morgan that exists that would
yeah.
not know what
So
to say.
that's Christiana.
Um,
That's very true. That's very true.
100%. Good for you for saying that. And oh my God, like, especially the part like, that is not whatever you're selling me,
Yeah,
it's not a price I'm willing to pay. Not for
yeah.
this.
And his face was Like he just didn't know what to say. And another time, me and Nick were counting inventory. It was me, Nick, an employee again, who's older than me. He came in, he goes to Nick, "Oh, hey, I'm here to speak to the boss. You're the boss?" And Nick's like, "No." He just, that's all he said was no. Went back to work. And he goes to my employee, "Are you the boss then?" She's like, "No." He goes, "Well, then who else can be?" And I said, "Me. Hi, I'm Christiana." And I mean, he was just blank faced. And, that unfortunately happens so much more than like I wish I could say it does. I've made it like into like fun now. Like now when it happens, like I have fun with it and I like to call them out. I like to call them out for like the gender roles and the stereotypes that they have that they might not realize they have, but they certainly have. I spoke to a group at UW-Madison, Women in Supply Chain, and someone was like, one of the people had a question, and it was a very good question. She's like, now you could use it as like, wood for your fire that you're building, but like, what about before you were confident enough to do that? And I said, it's a great question. I said it took time. Like, that's all I could say is it took time to build that confidence. Because like 3 years ago, Christiana would not have been able to do that, but current Christiana can. And again, it takes time. It doesn't happen overnight. It just doesn't.
Do you have any words of wisdom for women in supply chain, women in leadership, women in, I guess, really any industry who are coming up against stories like this on their own?
You know, I am a very emotional, sensitive, empathetic person. So like when I say like it's hard because the advice I'd give now is advice I'd find hard to follow when I was years ago before I was confident. But really grow that confidence and use the crap that people tell you as fuel to your fire and to your passion. It sounds really hard, but use that as fuel. Like use it to stoke your fire to make it bigger and greater and hotter because like that is incredible. Like make those people uncomfortable. Like use that as part of your passion and use it as part of your fight for what you're doing in your industry and the change you want to make. And again, it's going to take some time, but like when you get there, use that and put it in their face and just hold your ground. Because truly, like it's taken me time to get there, but like being there now, I'm like, yes, I'm going to shatter those glass ceilings. I'm going to break those gender stereotypes. Like we really can. It's going to take time to build that confidence. And if you feel like you're not there yet, it's okay. You'll get there. You will get there. We all get there at different times. And we all have something that happens to us in life that might push us further than not, but like you'll get there. And don't that whole imposter syndrome. Like you're gonna have it, but like you're where you're supposed to be. Like I keep telling myself, you are exactly where you're supposed to be. Even if you wish you were somewhere else, you are where you're supposed to be. And I always tell myself, flowers do not bloom all year long.
Say more about flowers do not bloom all year
Yeah,
round.
they don't. I mean, like, they don't bloom all year long. So sometimes you're not gonna be blooming. You're not gonna be open. You're not gonna be in your best self. Sometimes you're going to be wilted and you're not going to be blooming. You're not going to be just excelling. It's not going to happen year round. You're not going to bloom all year round. You're not. And accepting that you're going to go through those hardships. You're going to go through those times where it's pouring and you're not blooming and you're wilted and you're still underground and you're still a seed and you're not there yet. I mean, it's all of it.
Literally,
You're
literally,
constantly,
we do not expect flowers to bloom all year round.
no,
Why would we
no,
expect ourselves to
exactly.
always be on the up and up?
My orchids bloom once a year. Once a year, my orchids come out. Tulips come out once a year. Why
Yes.
should humans be expected to bloom all year round if flowers can't?
From, as you called yourself, the mouse,
Yeah.
to launching Door County Delivered while working the 9 to 5, to then becoming the owner of Door County Candle. And now you're making waves as a woman in leadership and in manufacturing. You are shattering glass ceilings. You're doing things you 3 years ago wouldn't have imagined.
No. Yeah.
And you have just announced another adventure, Luba Libations. Tell us about that.
Yes. So Luba Libations is a non-alcoholic cocktail brand that I am launching hopefully this fall, maybe winter. But really it came from the want for having a fun cocktail at night, but not always with the alcohol. And especially as an entrepreneur and someone who's always on the go, like I'd want a drink to celebrate the challenges, the victories, the failures, and the successes. I want to celebrate all of it, but I didn't always want the alcohol in it. And so we were looking for a mocktail one day, and I couldn't find one I loved. And I remember I told Nick, and he's like, well, if you don't love one, then make one. And I'm like, yes. And so I developed some recipes and working with a formulation company and working up with a mocktail that's going to be healthy, vegan, gluten-free, low sugar, low calorie, under 100 calories drink that people can enjoy and not have those, health consequences or the hangover that comes with it. And that really came from me wanting to, yeah, celebrate the ups and the downs without the alcohol. Don't get me wrong, I love my wine and my beer, but every day, it's not something I found myself wanting to have. I need to be able to celebrate with something that's not alcoholic all the time.
Mhm.
And so that's something that's coming this year. And it's something that I'm excited to be able to serve also at our candle pouring bars. We have a candle pouring bar at a shop where you can make your own candle. And it's something I want to be able to serve when people are making their own candles.
That's wonderful. What and so you recently announced this, and has there been some momentum? How did people respond after you announced that you were starting this?
Yeah, people were very awesome and encouraging. I had a few people reach out that said like that they are recovering alcoholics and they want something to be able to drink in public and not feel, alienated. I had some reach out that say that they have health issues and that they've noticed that they don't have that same social life that they did because they just simply can't enjoy a drink in public that is something fun that's not just water or soda. I've had a lot of really cool, inspiring stories that have come from this that I've been
Cool.
really inspired by. And so I'm really excited that it's not only something that is an NA brand, but also like a brand that empowers people.
Hmm. And so now you're balancing this new adventure with ownership at the. So
Yeah.
how do you balance all of it?
It's really hard. I think I'm still learning how to find balance because right now I feel like I don't have any. It's all pretty much work, but I'm finding it. I get really excited and I love working for myself. And I mean, you have to obviously if you're going to do it, but I love the feeling I get from it. I love the feeling that I'm improving a life, even if it's just one, but adding value or adding excitement. Me that like keeps me going. It's hard, but again, I think I'll very honestly say I'm still trying to figure out how to find the balance between both. Like someone told me, "How do you enjoy like your life between the business?" And I was like, I'm working on it. Like I'll be married for 5 years this year and I have these business, but I'll be honest, like I feel like it's been mostly work and I need to like learn and how to figure out like how to enjoy life in addition to work. It's hard,
Well,
but we'll get there.
and I mean, if you are aligned to your own values, like if your biggest value is making a difference in the work that you do, then you're living life the way that you should
Yes.
be. As long
Yes.
as you can test right against those values and gut check and say, is this aligned to who I am? Then I'm going to keep doing it.
Yeah. Exactly. And I think like the giving back part feels fulfilling to me. What I'm doing is more than just the surface level of it. You're really impacting lives and you're really impacting people. And that to me absolutely keeps me going.
Mm, I love it. Is there anything that you wish I would have asked you?
No, I've done a fair amount of podcasts, but this is probably one of my favorite ones because it's just very honest and like it's just a conversation and like it's just honest. And I love that. Just very honest and raw. And that's what I love.
That's what I love, and that's what this show is all about.
Your
And
emotional, raw, real self.
yes, absolutely. So before we wrap up, are there any upcoming projects or events or things going on at the candle shop that you'd like to plug?
We opened our candle bars. You can pour your own candle at our candle shop, which has been a new passion project of mine. And a portion of all those sales also go towards nonprofits throughout the year as part of our mission of Candles Creating Change. So that's something that's been like a big passion project for me. I'll be at a ton of farmers markets this summer, which is something else that I'm really excited about. Other than that, just, support local, support small. You're supporting a livelihood. You're supporting a family, you're supporting a life. Whenever you buy from a small business, you're having them do their own little happy dance. Whenever I get an order come through, I legitimately do a little happy dance. And it's true. When you shop small, that's what happens from it. So just kind of a reminder that it makes a big impact.
And where can our listeners find you?
Yes, you can find us at doorcountycandle.com. We have a website, and on there you have all of our whole catalog, but also our information to contact our store.
And if you want to go follow Christiana as a person, she's been sharing a lot of good stuff on LinkedIn recently too, so you should go follow her there.
Thank you.
Yes, of course. Christiana, thank you for coming on the show and sharing more about your world with us. It's been so cool to hear about your experience.
Thanks, Morgan. I'm honored to have been here today.
To all of our listeners out there, huge thanks for tuning in and hanging out with us. Keep creating, keep making magic. Your art is a gift to you and the world. Thank you for tuning in to this week's episode of Art is the New Wall Street. If you liked what you heard today, give our show a follow or subscribe wherever you listen to your podcasts. You can find us on social media or at artistthenewwallstreet.com. Keep creating, and we'll see you next time.